President Trump is adamant that Iran can never acquire a nuclear bomb. But will he be able to dismantle the Islamic Republic's nuclear weapons program through negotiations? Well, Alexandria Paolozzi, Director of Government Relations at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies Action, joins us now with the latest details. Alexandria, give us the latest on Trump's quest to stop Iran's march towards a nuclear weapon.
Thanks for having me, Raj. This is extremely relevant right now. There are current talks happening in Rome with a negotiating team from the United States, and President Trump is seeking to strike a deal, a diplomatic solution to Iran's nuclear program. And they're going to be meeting for a third phase on Saturday. It was originally scheduled for Wednesday of this week. Now it was pushed to Saturday. So we'll see how things go. It's very progressive, but he has ran on this issue of stopping Iran from obtaining a nuclear bomb. And this is his way of doing that through diplomatic initiatives. And we're seeing that play out in real time.
So there seems to be a lot of saber rattling, the United States, building up its bomber capabilities in the region, Israel and the United States doing these joint military exercises. So in your opinion, Alexandria, do you see there actually being a real possibility that there could be some sort of attack against Iran in the near future?
So President Trump has been very strong in his defense of Israel, one of our greatest allies, and the U.S. approach to making sure that Iran does not obtain nuclear weapons. And in doing that, you have to dismantle their program. It is crazy that Iran has gotten to this point. They're a stone throw away from obtaining nuclear capability. And the only reason why they are is because the narrative shifted from the gold standard of saying if you want nuclear ambitions for energy purposes, you can do that. But it does not include enrichment. It does not include the component necessary to create a bomb. Well, we know where we stand today, that was not the case. And so Trump is kind of throwing a 1-2 punch. He's saying strongly that a strike is on the table, but yet he's using diplomatic terms to go forward, negotiate, and try and get them to lower their enrichment and get to a capability that is going to be good for the international community. Now, we know, unfortunately, that Iran is not a good actor and is not a trustworthy person or entity that we can rely on as far as negotiations go. And so they've already been threatening our goods, our services, our international and national security. And we saw that with the horrific attacks from 10/7 being carried out by Iranian proxies. And Trump has to use everything in his arsenal to make sure that we're stopping this, and we're stopping this now.
So how are members of Congress responding to this threat?
So we're seeing members of Congress be vocal right now that to ensure any deal, any framework that is being discussed in Rome right now between the United States and Iran, although indirectly, that it has to include a complete dismantlement of Iran's nuclear programs. We have Senator Fetterman, who said just the other day on X, the only purpose of Iran's nuclear program is to create weapons, provide our comprehensive military support, and whatever else is necessary for Israel that they require to destroy Iran's capabilities. And then from a Republican, we saw Senator Cornyn. He praised the president's commitment to a non-nuclear Iran, and he stated that any deal would hopefully include complete dismantlement of their weapons program. So we see this time and time again where members of Congress, since the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, back in 2015, say Iran cannot have weapons-grade materials. And unfortunately, from 2015 to now, they've enriched. They've done so publicly. They've done so behind closed doors. And we're seeing that they're so close, it could take a short weekend holiday for them to obtain those weapons.
Well, Alexandria, there's not many people I know who are more plugged into what's happening on the Hill, what's happening in the foreign policy sphere. But let me take you maybe on this last question one step away from formalities and just ask you kind of peer to peer. And I know this is like a really open ended question, but do you see these negotiations working? Like, is this all facade, or do you think there's actually some hope that this could actually work? These negotiations in Rome.
Under President Trump, he is the great negotiator. And that is something that he has been vocal about when he pulled the United States out of the Joint Comprehensive Action in 2018 to today, where he is leaving every piece of leverage on the table. You know, you talked about joint strikes between the United States and Israel on Iran's nuclear facilities. And he has been clear. He does not want to go that route. He wants to take a diplomatic approach, and that's what he's giving Iran the opportunity to do right now. Iran is vulnerable from their proxy's attack on 10/7 and Israel's response to that attack, whether it be with Hamas or Hezbollah or the Houthis. We're seeing that they're more vulnerable and they're weaker than they have been in the past. And so the president is taking advantage of that fact, and he's trying. Whether Iran and their supreme leader allows this to happen, we'll see. But as far as implementing sanctions, making sure maximum pressure campaign to make economic power and struggle against Iran as leverage is there, again, the 1-2 punch. He is using everything that he can to make sure that he's negotiating from a place of strength. But from an FDD perspective, there's no framework that's out there at this point. And I think, along with members of Congress, our largest concern right now, and the concern for the American people, need to be dismantlement, complete dismantlement. We saw Americans care about this issue, and they voted accordingly. President Trump has come into office, and one of the first acts he did was to redesignate the Houthis as a terrorist organization. One of the first acts that President Biden did was to declassify them. And what did we see? After 10/7, the Houthis, an Iranian proxy, held up the oil shipping lanes in the Straits of Hormuz. So the response from a U.S. perspective was needing to bolster its military presence in the Persian Gulf to ensure that those lanes were open and accessible. And Americans feel the disruption to what's happening, not just domestically with our national security, but through economic means internationally. And that is where, again, the president is trying to make sure he has everything at his fingertips as he's going into these negotiations.
Alexandria Paolozzi, thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Rosh. If anyone wants to follow real-time experts or understand more about these issues, follow fddaction.org, and you will get all the information you could possibly need.